thought-provoking, up the ante a little bit. Today we're going to start reviewing for your Chapter 7 test. Part 1 is on Thursday in class, which will be the non-calculator portion, and then Part 2 will be the application portion. And that's like definitely, it's a smaller portion. It really is just a bigger word problem and then a mini word problem. So that'll be the smaller of the two. Was everybody able to find the warm-up? So I thought we'd just go through this warm-up together as a class as like a nice little refresher. And see, I started off with a really crazy looking log equation. Again, my goal is to like push the ante a little bit here. So we have on the left, the log of x plus the log of the quantity x plus 4. On the right side is the log of x minus 2, and then there's another plus 4 outside. Notice the parentheses versus the plus 4 separate from it. How do you think you would start? So what could we do first? Step 1. Faith, what do you think? Yeah, let's combine those. So there's 2 of them on the left. They're being added. That's called the product property. You pull them together as a product. And as a product, if we multiply them, we end up with x squared plus 4x. And I'm going to place parentheses back around them because they are together. Good morning. And then we have the equal sign. We have the log on the other side, and then x minus 2 and plus 4. Gabby, this is in Google Classroom. It's just the warm-up. All right. So if this 4 wasn't here, then we could use the property of equality for logarithms. And I could then set x squared plus 4x equal to x minus 2. However, the plus 4 is there. So we have to continue to pull the logarithms together. So if it's a logarithm, essentially we need to try and condense them together when there is another value. Sorry. There's another value being added or subtracted. So we're going to subtract that whole logarithm to the other side to get it away from that 4. So the goal is to keep the 4 by itself, the numerical value, and the logarithms together on the other side. So subtract this whole quantity. And you're just subtracting the log in front. That x minus 2 stays the same. So now I have the log x squared plus 4x minus the log x minus 2, and then it's equal to 4. So the reason we need to set it equal to that other number is so that eventually we can write it in exponential form. And it has to be equal to a number by itself to set it into exponential form. So now thinking of those properties, to continue to condense, Jaden, what do we do with the minus sign? Oops. Yeah, I've been forgetting my 2. So when you divide logs, you're dividing the expression after the log. So we condense the log, base 2. And then we're taking x squared plus 4x and dividing that by x minus 2. And again, this is grouped together, and that x minus 2 is grouped together. So now this is considered condensed. So we use the product property to multiply and pull them together. The quotient property, again, you're just dividing the expressions after the log. So one log, the expressions after it are getting divided. So now that we've done everything we can in logarithmic form, I have a single log. We're going to change this into exponential form. So the goal when you condense it is so that you can then change it into the other form. And that other form has the base of e, the exponent of 4, so 2 to the 4th, and then it's equal to x squared plus 4x over x minus 2. Don't forget about that part. The log can't just disappear. You're changing the form and writing it as an inverse or an exponent. But it's just not vanishing. You're just writing it in its inverse form. So Brooke, what is 2 to the 4th? Try it again. 2 to the 4th. So 2 times 2. There we go. That sounds better. And then I'm going to place that 16 over 1. So I want you to think into your mathematical brains. How can you solve this equation? So it's currently as a fraction. How can I solve this? Okay. You are so close. You're on the right track. Not quite though. So I can't make this 2 equations, but we definitely have to do something with that 16. Does anybody remember cross multiplying? So if you take 16 and multiply across to the x minus 2 and the x squared plus 4x across or diagonal to the 1. That's how you take a proportion, which is what this is called, and get it out of fractional form. You multiply with cross multiplication, which is kind of multiplying diagonal. So 16 times x minus 2 is 16x minus 32. And then that's equal to x squared plus 4x. That's cross multiplication. So it's taking the fraction and pulling it out of fractional form. So Jordan, now what would we do? Yeah. So move everything to one side. And she said set it equal to 0. So Jordan, 2 numbers that multiply to be 32, but combined to be negative 12. Perfect. Oops, that one's not 4. That one's 8. So upping the ante a little bit compared to the homework problems last night. Definitely a little more interesting, I would say. The last thing is to take those 2 answers and check them into the original problem. So the first answer we got was an 8. And just make sure that you can replace all of the x's with 8. Whatever's after the log must remain positive. Bigger than 0 as well. So this is an 8, that's a 12, and then that would be a 6. So that's okay. And then if I replace it with 4, this is a 4, that's positive, not 0. 4 plus 4 is 8, positive, not 0. 4 minus 2 is 2, which is still positive and not 0. So when you check for extraneous solutions, make sure that you're checking into the original problem. If the number you plug in, so if my answer was a 2, let's just say the answer was a 2. If I plug in 2 minus 2 right here and get 0, then it cannot happen because you can't take the log of 0. It doesn't exist. The calculator will scream at you and say error. Physically doesn't scream, but I wish it would every once in a while. Like, no, you did something wrong. I'm going to scream at you. All right, one last problem on here. Just a little refresher with exponents. What do you do with 216 and 36? Alyssa? 6. And on the other side, 6 squared. Yeah, nice job. And then also when the bases are the same, what can you do? Awesome. Make those exponents equal to each other. So what does that become? If I distribute those through, what do you get? And then solve, take something to one side and the number to the other. However you want to do it, it's totally up to you. If you like having the x's on the left, you could subtract the x and add the number. And you get -9 halves. That one might have been a little easier than the log problem. So are there questions on either of these two? So you can see the log problem was way longer than that little exponent problem. Question, yeah. So do you have to check So that is a really good question. She's saying, do we have to check it when it's an exponential form? When it's an exponential form, the domain of exponents are -infinity to +infinity, which means x can be anything. So you don't have to check it unless you want to make sure that you've solved it correctly. That would be the reason to check it. The reason we have to check logs is because the domain of the log, x's have to go from 0, bigger than 0, to infinity. So there's a restriction on what your x values are allowed to be when it's in log form, but there are not any in exponential form. Really good question, Riley. Other questions? So I have today as a practice day. And then tomorrow, I'm hoping maybe we could do Kahoot at home. So I think maybe we'll do that as a review tomorrow. But I want today to just kind of be in class practice since you guys are here and I want to be able to walk around and talk to the majority of you and make sure that you're doing all right with these concepts. So if you go to Google Classroom, get the right class up. The homework is like a 2-part assignment. Part 1 is the worksheet that is posting. There we go. So part 1 is a worksheet. And that worksheet is on equations. So exponential and logarithmic equations. And then part 2 are some book problems, which you now have the online book access thanks to Faith and Jordan, which makes it a little easier to use. So the other part is a few book problems to start reviewing for the test. So there's some exponential problems on here. The last 2 are word problems. So that would be part 2 of the homework. Taking a peek at that worksheet. I don't have a. Looking at number 2, I see that minus sign. So that's going to be similar to the problem we just did. So you're going to first move the exponent of 2. So make the 2 become x squared. And then a minus to condense becomes a division problem. So that one will be similar to the one that we just went over. Not quite as involved though. Number 3 is going to be very similar to the one we just went over. So you'll have to take the log on the right, move it next to the log on the left. So that one's very similar. And then there's a couple in the next page as well. There's a few other equations involving logs. So you have not quite 20 minutes. It looks like a little shy, 18 minutes. Please use this time to benefit you, to ask questions. Feel free to work with others as well. But I will be walking around the room. Those of you at home, please don't hesitate to